Hello, hello, hello. Not going to focus on the tea today, but first shot at this Fujian double smoked Fu brick with the golden yellow mold. Super light brew today. Today I want to talk about contrast. Contrast in tea is such an obvious awesomeness, but contrast in a lot of other ways in our lives can be incredibly instrumental. And this episode's going to have a bit more smells and I can't get too caught up in the tea. Contrast is a beautiful reminder of what we have. Have you ever gone on a vacation and you come home and you feel reset? Maybe, and I've never done this, but maybe even taken a large quantity of, God, they call it plant medicine, kill me, of psychedelic substances. Coming back to normal, my goodness, that's a serious contrast there. Here goes my political career. Contrast is useful because it reminds us of what we have. And what we have is often very good. There are studies in, goodness, anecdote and whatever, but that even in the worst of situations, a couple years after, let's say you become a quadriplegic, you lose someone really important, you don't get that big career push or make it to the big sports thing or that specific school you want to go to, or you don't pass the bar or something. A lot of people come back to kind of a 7-ish out of 10 happiness because we as humans kind of like homeostasis. We like keeping things fairly steady. Contrast is a way of purposefully building in a healthy level of unsteadiness. The Stoics, and I think it was Seneca, recommended every once a year for at least some amount of time to live an impoverished life, to dress plainly and eat basic food and sleep like everyone else does, to remind yourself of what's important. And that's a very tactful thing to do. Contrast can be found in all sorts of ways. Of course, in tea, my goodness. A raw tea versus a white tea. There can be some similarities, but certainly the differences become pronounced. And when you're introducing a new tea drinker to tea, it's often a great idea, maybe the best way to introduce them is through comparing teas instead of trying to pinpoint exactly that maple syrup, leather, sofa, pencil shavings thing that's going on that you in your own little weird Denny world totally get, but everyone else around you is like, what? Cheers. Okay, not gonna talk about the tea. Not gonna talk about the tea. Not gonna do it. I'm definitely going to bring this on to the next sets. Yeah. But contrast again. Contrast can be something that we bring about on purpose in our lives. And there's different ways of doing it. But I think contrast helps us create a larger change or delta of appreciation in our lives, which I think can increase happiness. I was watching a YouTube channel of some dude who purposefully lives in the most crappy way possible 90% of the time so that one day a month he can live like a true king and do some crazy stuff. And I think that's interesting. Probably kind of dumb. Because there's a certain base level of happiness, referencing my previous episode about long-term happiness. It's really valuable that we all want to kind of build towards. And maybe the strategy isn't necessarily to live a terrible life most of the time so that every once in a while you have these really high peaks that create an incredible amount of delta of happiness. Maybe though, there's something to be said about contrast, about changing types of happiness or ways to engage in the world, or places to be, or teas to drink, or foods to try, or languages to speak. They can be really beneficial. So how can you introduce contrast in your life in a strategic way? Is it creating a schedule so that you're out backpacking once a month, every month of the year? And that gets cold, trust me. Or traveling if you are so lucky to be able to do so. Or maybe it's the food that you eat. Maybe it's the cuisines that you cook. Maybe it's the tea that you have. Or maybe it's workouts. Or maybe it's going without a phone. Oh my God, without a phone for just a day to see what it's like. Maybe it's being in a cold lake and then jumping in, or rather going back into a sauna and then jumping into a cold lake again. Contrast accentuates sensations. And it reminds us of how good the normal things that we have available to us are. I got back from a trip, and man, having a dishwasher is sweet. Shout out to dishwashers. But it's hard to remember that dishwashers are so awesome when you have one every day, no matter what. Maybe you love the cold, but every once in a while you like to get nice and hot to remind yourself of how good it is to be cozied up in a nice blanket. And again, not all contrast is healthy or good. Plenty of contrast is a distraction. But it's useful to remind yourself by changing it up, by going someplace different, by taking a different walking path, by calling up a friend you haven't talked to since you were in kindergarten. Build in contrast in your life to remind yourself of how good your life is, and to maybe have those peaks of life just be a little bit higher. Let me know how you experience contrast in your own life. Cheers.